It's Friday, March 20th, 2020. Digital Trends Live is about to start. Here are some of the topics we're covering on today's episode of the show. European leaders have called on Netflix and YouTube to throttle their platforms because of the fear that HD content could affect the availability of bandwidth. We'll have some breaking news about Amazon's response. And despite quarantines and social distancing, many people have been lining up to get their hands on Doom Eternal, which officially releases today, along with the ever-popular Animal Crossing. And we'll also be discussing the utilization of industrial IoT with Sean Peterson of Strong Arm Tech, a company that tracks the data of people in the workplace and applies a safety score to their environment. And it's Friday, which means, of course, it's time for another edition of Tech Briefs with Ken Young, the technology editor of Flipboard, where we'll catch you up on the biggest tech news of the week, as well as some new entertainment news. We've got all that and more coming up on Digital Trends Live. Hello, everyone. This is Digital Trends Live, broadcasting live every weekday, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, bringing you trending tech headlines, news, interviews, discussions, and so much more, all while broadcasting live across a number of different platforms. We're on Periscope, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Dailymotion, Apple News, 2 different mobile apps, a smart television app, and at digitaltrends.com/live. So wherever you are, you can get our programming. And I know a lot of you are working from home right now. We thank you very much for joining us. There's all kinds of news. It's changing by the minute, let alone the hour, and we'll try to keep you up to date. We are broadcasting live today, though, on location from Pregame HQ here in Portland, Oregon. We're going to have Ciara Pressler joining us here in just a little while for another edition of Work Life, so we really thank her for letting us be here in her space right now. And to get to the news, let's talk about what has happened, and there is so much that's going on. First off, I want to say hello to everybody in New York and California. I know as far as California, the state of California went into lockdown yesterday, and I know the city of New York is having some announcements right now about that as well. So we'll keep you up to date on what we know about that, but obviously we're going to talk about the tech side of things a little bit as well. So let's get to this. A lot of us are at home streaming a lot of content right now. That is really where the world is going, in particular Europe. There are some things going on that actually could have an effect here in the United States as well, where we are. So Netflix and YouTube were asked by the European leaders to throttle what they're streaming. And that is because of the worry that with everybody at home working and streaming their content, that this could affect the available bandwidth. So this is what Netflix and YouTube both came out and said, that they agreed to do this. So this just happened in the last 24 hours, that they'll be streaming only SD content, so standard definition, from now on, at least for a while, in order to help alleviate any issues that Europe could have in association with that. And we did have breaking news that came out just about a half hour ago, actually, from this broadcast, and that is that Amazon Prime is also going to be working on this as well, that they said that they are looking into throttling their bandwidth as well, their streaming, no matter where they are. So not just in Europe, so that's actually looking more at the United States as well, or North America and other parts of the world. So I think this is something that we could see as a trend. You know, in the grand scheme of things, is that really that big of an issue? You may not get the HD content, but we're still getting everything else that we want out of that, because we all want all kinds of entertainment right now. There's never been a bigger demand for streaming content, but also everybody working from home and everybody doing everything online. I don't think this is the end of the world, but definitely something that you should be aware of. And again, we're just trying to keep you up to date on the news. It's going to be rapid fire as we go through. Something else, another announcement, just for those of you out there who haven't done your taxes yet. We do have a delay on that. So it's going to be July 15th now is what the IRS has said, or what actually Stephen Mnuchin said. So that's another delay on that. So that's, you have until July 15th to actually file your taxes. That's kind of a good thing. Moving on here. We're all over the board today with news to keep you up to date. For those of you out there on Tinder, I know it is a difficult time to go out on a date right now because everybody's pretty much in quarantine. Tinder has now changed up some of the things that they're doing, and we're seeing some other dating sites do this as well, to where they will let everyone swipe for free, essentially. So they're letting everybody use their passport option. They're even opening up some live streaming options to where you can actually live stream your dates. Match.com is doing this. Match is also launching, a live streaming feature called Live, and also is Plenty of Fish. So a lot of these different things that we're seeing change so quick, it's just kind of giving you an idea that tech is adapting as we go. And again, by the minute, by the hour, things change, but this is how the world is right now. So that's what's going on. So that's going to be until April 30th that the Tinder Passport feature will be available right there. And continuing on with entertainment, we also are seeing some pretty unique things along the lines of streaming, as we see a lot of shows with live studio audiences are now adapting. If you've been watching, Jimmy Fallon, I believe Jimmy Kimmel, all the major shows, Stephen Colbert are broadcasting from home. Conan O'Brien announcing that he's going to be recording his show on an iPhone and having guests via Skype. That is where we're at right now. So that's the kind of thing that we're talking about. We're live streaming as well, so don't forget that. Hit subscribe here. But yeah, Conan O'Brien, that's what they're going to be doing. So again, seeing these different use cases of technology, adapt to it, kind of fascinating as we go through, trying to keep you up to date on that. Another big change has to do with how we're getting our movies. As you know, all movie theaters are closing down, and what to do with those movies. A lot of production companies have either delayed production or pushed movies out even as long as a year. I think Fast and Furious 9 is a year out now instead of releasing just in the next couple of months. So what some people are doing, though, is actually putting these movies out and making them available sooner on streaming platforms. That's going to be an interesting trend to see how that works. Universal Pictures has put out some of their movies to where it'll be available for on demand, but Disney has just made a note that one of their new Pixar films, Onward, is actually going to be available to buy digitally on Friday, which is 2 weeks after it technically hit theaters. Probably not a lot of people have seen it in the theater. I don't know what the box office is, but most of us have not been going to movies. And then on top of that, they're going to have it available on Disney Plus on April 3rd. So will that be a trend where we see more big blockbuster movies, be released on streaming services? I think it's something that, however long this goes, the further it goes, it's something that we could see change. Again, changes by the hour, but that's where we're at right now with that. And we also have a couple of other things just talking about delays in the supply chain. There's certainly something that we've discussed when it comes to tech products, with China shutting down a lot of their factories, now starting to open back up, but that still puts a big strain on the supply chain. We do have reports, though, that Apple is still anticipating that their 5G iPhone will be coming out in September. As of right now, that's the report we're getting, so that we could still be getting that. So that's at least one sign of a product so far that may not be delayed. Otherwise, expect some things to get delayed. It's just going to be part of the process as we go through it. So there's some updates on this. And again, you can follow along at digitaltrends.com for everything that's going on. We do have some other news to talk about, though. So let's get to that. Oh, I do want to say we have a guest coming up, too, in about actually less than 10 minutes from now. And this is a pretty big one. It's in the title of this show. And from IBM, we're going to be talking about Summit, which is their supercomputer, which is working to get basically to develop a vaccine or a cure for what is going on right now. So they're going to be joining us here just shortly. So just want to make sure that everybody knows that if you're commenting about that in the chat. I'm going through a lot of news really fast. It's just what we have to do because there's so much to get to you. Something else that I know a lot of people are out there and excited about right now are some video games. Streaming gaming has never been more popular, but there's still two big releases that are coming out today, Doom Eternal and Animal Crossing. A couple of noteworthy things of that, other than everybody wants to play some games right now. It's a nice distraction, nice escape. Doom Eternal, which is the latest one in the iteration of the Doom franchise, is out right now, and GameStop, as of right now, is still open. GameStop, as of this moment anyway, GameStop stores are still open. They're following CDC recommendations as far as how many people are in the store. They actually said that they believe themselves to be essential employees, essential businesses during this time. I mean, that's up for debate for everybody. I mean, we do need video games. I don't know if essential, if it goes along the same lines as hospital workers, but nonetheless, that's where we're at. So that's something that's as we see things change, as we see things adapt, we're going to see different ways that's going to happen. Okay, taking a look here, just to update right now, just to update this for the IBM research thing. I said cure, I meant a vaccine. So just to clarify that, we'll be talking about that here in just a minute. Also, Animal Crossing, which is out today, and that is another big thing. As far as I know, a lot of people are very excited about Animal Crossing, and that is obviously a big game release to be coming out today. I know many people are downloading that. So of note for that. Continuing on here as we get you some rapid fire news, just things to keep you up to date, and then we'll be bringing on our first guest here in just a moment. We do have from Instagram some news about them that they are testing out a Snapchat style disappearing messages. So this is just a news release that came out, and it has to do with actually Jane Mensch and Wong, who unearths code in a lot of different platforms, a lot of different applications, and then figures out what they're working on. This is something that Instagram is allegedly working on to follow along with Snapchat, to where you would have disappearing messages, which I know a lot of people are interested in that. You know, you can let us know in the comments if that's something that you're looking forward to. I know in this time of a lot of other news going on that may seem minor, but hey, that's an update that was going to be going on. And that is something you can take a look at. We've got more details at digitaltrends.com. But again, ephemeral messaging. So it's a feature that's not available on Facebook right now. It's not available on many other platforms, Snapchat being one of the leaders of that. Instagram now also coming with that as well. All right, got two more quick things here to get to you, and then we're going to go to a break, and we'll be getting ready for our guest. There is this. This is just something that's just to show you that there's still some fun, weird things that are going on in the world right now. This is coming from Paris, where there is an AI robot that sings Gregorian monk hymns. It's kind of creepy, but it is a pretty good utilization of artificial intelligence. So this is something that we're seeing. It's coming from MIT's Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Lab, so CSAIL. They're working in conjunction with the Centre Pompidou Museum in Paris. And that is what we're looking at right now, if you're seeing that on your screen. It's interesting, it's haunting, but nonetheless, that is a utilization of artificial intelligence. And we'll be talking more about artificial intelligence here in just a minute, but you can read all about this singing robot at digitaltrends.com.
Hey, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. It's now time for the product of the day.
All right. So as we go through, let us talk about this. This is our product of the day, and this is what we are taking a look at. So it is a CalDigit Thunderbolt 3 mini dock. So this is a portable mini dock, which obviously, as everybody's working from home, that's an important thing that we're going to be wanting. So this one in particular is bus powered, has an aluminum dock with a built-in Thunderbolt 3 cable. So the cable's built in on there. It's got dual 4K extended displays. So as you're hooking up your different monitors, you'll have 4K at 60 hertz. So that's pretty great. You've also got a Type A USB port. It supports 5 gigs per second transfer speeds. I mean, that's huge. And 900 milliamp of power for the battery, so a lot of great things on there. It also supports gigabit Ethernet, right? We're all going to be connecting online right now, so that's a pretty important thing. So that's something you can take a look at, and right now, if you click that link that's below, it's normally $159.99. Right now, it's $129.99. So again, that is our product of the day, so follow along with that right there, and that is what you can get. All right. I know we're going through a lot of stuff really fast here, and that's why we want to keep you up to date with everything, but we've got some great interviews coming up. So next, we're going to take a break, and then we've got Dave Turek from IBM Cognitive Systems, the VP of Technical Computing, to talk about Summit, which is one of their supercomputers, which is actually working towards a vaccine for what we're dealing with in relation to the coronavirus. So that's coming up next. We've got a lot of questions for him, but we are broadcasting live. I thank everybody for joining us. Hit subscribe, share the show, let other people know about it. We'll be back in a minute with more Digital Trends Live. Welcome back to Digital Trends Live. Again, thank you everyone for joining us wherever you are. We do appreciate it. Hit that subscribe button, share the show. We'd like to keep you up to date on what is going on in the world of technology. And of course, talking about coronavirus, there is no avoiding that, but how is tech handling this? And what are some different ways that we're tackling these issues to maybe even find a vaccine for it? Well, joining us right now, we have Dave Twerk, who is the VP of Technical Computing for IBM Cognitive Systems. Dave, first off, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Oh, you're welcome.
I was just reading this today, actually, and just talking about what is going on in association with everybody trying to find some kind of vaccine or some kind of way to tackle what is happening. And I know IBM, obviously at the forefront of artificial intelligence and computing. Can you walk us through what this summit program is and maybe give us a little bit of a backstory on the actual computer itself?
Yeah, absolutely. So Summit is the name of the fastest computer bridge laboratory. So it's owned and operated by the Department of Energy. Oak Ridge National Laboratory is the largest national science laboratory operated by the U.S. government. What they're doing, of course, is they're using the computer for a lot of different scientific investigations. So most recently, they began to apply it to looking for therapeutic agents that might assist in dealing with the coronavirus. They do that by virtue of writing software that's based on an understanding of chemistry, physics, and so on, that allows them to simulate the behavior of the virus in the presence of a healthy cell. So you move away from a concept of biology that you think of from your high school days of beakers and pipettes and things like that, to doing everything computationally in a digital world. By virtue of doing that, you can actually explore the science of the virus and potential therapeutic agents much faster than you could in a real world analog or classic kind of laboratory setting.
So when you think about that and utilizing artificial intelligence in this manner to run these virtual tests, essentially, is this something that's been done before, or is this a brand new process that you're developing here with this?
So it's been done before in the sense that for a long time, people in the field of computational biology and computational chemistry have used supercomputers to model the behavior of compounds, biological agents, and so on. Years ago, for example, when H1N1 became activated, we actually did some work inside of IBM trying to model the evolutionary pathway of that particular flu strain. And that's very customary because if you think about flu, and we understand and want to make very clear that the coronavirus is not a flu, but when you look at flu as an exemplar of how these things work, every year you have a flu season, runs effectively from November to April, and there's a gestation period where the virus will passively kind of evolve, and it gives you that little bit of breathing room to construct vaccines for the next season's outbreak. That vaccine is structured based on the computational predictions of supercomputers of how the virus that was, let's say, present in 2019 will evolve to show itself in 2020. So in that sense, it's a continuation and extension of what we've been doing for quite some time. This, of course, is different. It's not a flu virus. The virus itself has different constructs. Methodologically, a lot of the principles are being applied, but it's never been done at this scale of computing before.
Utilizing something like this versus just going back to your comparison to what traditionally it was, you have scientists in laboratories with beakers, our traditional idea of biology. Having a supercomputer that can do this, how many, I guess, to kind of get a little bit more detail on it, how many virtual tests is it running at one time? What is it able to do? And with something like that, how long do you think it would take it to figure out what the proper mix of, and again, maybe not using the proper terms, but the proper mix of chemicals would be to tackle this?
Right. So I guess the first way to think of it is the purpose and the target for what was attempted at Oak Ridge National Laboratory was to look at a broad array of potential compounds that, in theory, biological theory, might have had an impact on this particular virus. Now, In the real world, absent the ability of a supercomputer to operate on this, you'd be testing thousands of compounds. In this particular case, it was 8,000 compounds. That could literally take you years, depending on how many scientists you had working on it, how quickly you could stand up a major laboratory, and so on. So what this does is it examines every one of those 8,000 compounds under a set of criteria of what constitutes effectiveness, and quickly culls it down, in this case, to 77. Now, this is not a simple process, because what you're effectively doing is you're modeling at the atomic level the behavior or the description of the virus, and you're looking at it in its operational sense in the context to which you expose it. That context would be a new therapeutic drug, like chloroquine, for example, has been talked about in the last few days. You'd be looking at a whole vast array of compounds like that, and you'd be manipulating the base understanding of biological mechanisms to understand whether it'd be effective against preventing the virus from contaminating a living cell. So the number of test cases run easily into the many, many millions. And you run these test cases in parallel. It's one of the attributes of the architecture of the system. And from that, you look for proximity to the criteria that dictates whether something is good or not good. And then you sort of winnow this down to 77. Once you get to the 77, though, it's back to the laboratory. You have to kind of really operate on these things in the real world and see if they have the effect that the mathematics and the science and everything else has predicted. So that process will unfold once you finish the computational step.
Gotcha. So then you go into the actual physical tests of it to see if it'll actually play through.
That's right. So the way we talk about this, the role of the supercomputer is to take the analog world, the world that you and I live in, and put it into a digital world. And so we do all this stuff digitally, but then we have to bring it back to the real world and make sure that it really works. Because there's all sorts of uncertainties that you can never be sure you've captured. There's all sorts of complexities in the models. There's also weak spots in theory, all that have to be really vetted in a laboratory kind of context. But that said, it's a whole lot better working with 1% of the problem as opposed to 100% of the problem. Going from 8,000 to 77,
Absolutely.
99% reduction.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's tremendous. Looking at artificial intelligence and the use of supercomputers, what we're doing right now, you mentioned how, even going back with influenza, it's a prediction essentially on what happened in 2019 to go with 2020 using, very complex processes, but utilizing that. Is this something that you see, in the coming years as we see the advancement of AI and computing in general, is this something where we would be even able to more quickly get a vaccine or more quickly even predict what a possible outbreak or pandemic could be?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is yes, in two separate ways. There's a vaccine, and then there are therapeutic agents to deal with disease, or prophylactically to prevent somebody from catching a disease. Vaccines, of course, are complicated because you need to do human trials and so on, which really constitutes the extensive part of the calendar to produce them. And then, of course, there's the manufacturing elements and so on. The therapeutic agents are interesting because that's the other side of the coin. In the absence of a vaccine, do we have therapeutic medicines that can actually treat the disease and allow you to survive? So think of it in terms of HIV and AIDS. You really can't cure it, but there's a vast portfolio of antiviral agents that have been developed over the course of years that allow people to live very normal lives unaffected by the disease to a great extent. And that's been a tremendous advancement on the therapeutic side. That, by the way, is not a casual example I brought forth, because there's an affinity between the antivirals used in HIV treatment and what people suspect could be effective in the coronavirus domain. And because there's some relationship, shall we say, between the virus here and the virus HIV. Not that they're the same thing by any stretch of the imagination, but broadly, they're both RNA kinds of viruses. And that broad category says, look over here for what your therapeutic agents are and not over there. It's as simple as that.
Wow. I mean, it's just really fascinating and incredible what you're doing with this. And obviously, part of a giant wheel here to try to tackle what's going on. And definitely, like you said, narrowing this down from 100% to 1% is tremendous. And I want to say thank you so much, too, for taking some time out of your day to join us here just to walk through what this is that you're doing. It's so important. And I want to know for everybody at home, too, where can they go to find out more about what you're doing?
Well, you can go to Oak Ridge National Laboratory and to get details on the science that was executed on the system there. And you can certainly go to www.ibm.com, where we put information about what IBM is doing.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Really, really appreciate you being here on Digital Trends Live. All right, and again, we're broadcasting live here, but fascinating, right? That is something that's at the forefront of tackling what's going on, and we appreciate everybody who joined us for that interview. Really big thank you to IBM. Appreciate them letting Dave be on here. And we've got more, though. We've got more coming up. We need to take a break because we're going to come back. We're going to talk about industrial IoT, switching gears just a little bit, but talking about workplace safety and how technology is changing that up to keep people safe. And to do so, we're going to have Sean Peterson from Strong Arm Technologies going to be joining us next, so stick around back here in a minute with more Digital Trends Live. Welcome back to Digital Trends Live. Thank you for joining us. If this is your first time watching, we appreciate it. Hit that subscribe button on whatever platform you're on. We're always here, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, every weekday, bringing you tech news, headlines, interviews, and discussions. And right now, we're going to have a little bit of all of that because we're going to discuss IoT in the workforce and what exactly is an industrial athlete. We're going to discuss all of that more and get an answer to that. Joining us, we have Sean Peterson from Strong Arm Technologies. Thank you so much for joining us, Sean.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So I want to give everybody just a little bit of context on what we're talking about. Can you explain what Strong Arm Technologies is and a little bit of this concept of what an industrial athlete is?
Sure. Strong Arm Technology is a company built for the industrial athlete. We're a safety science company. You look at industrial athletes as the individuals that are, quite frankly, keeping our country alive right now. Guys that are paving the roads, that are delivering the packages, that are in those warehouses, working double overtime right now in all the fulfillment centers to make sure everyone is on their toes. And what we do as a safety science company is our goal is to keep every one of them proud, protected, and productive. We have a wearable sensor that drives real-time risk data. We provide haptic feedback and alerting to help avoid the injuries that they may see throughout their day. And it's a cloud-based platform where we can finally drive true metrics around what the physiology of these individuals are to help reduce all injuries for industrial athletes around the world.
Which is incredible. I mean, you mentioned the people that are keeping the world going right now, and that is 100% true. I mean, it's very important. We're all getting packages delivered right now. Everybody's kind of hunkering down, and there's still a lot of people out there who are at the forefront making that happen. And when we look at some of your technology and some of the ways that you're able to track this, can we go into that just a little bit more? Now, you mentioned haptic feedback. You mentioned different kinds of things, and I guess wearables essentially that they would have. How does that work for the person, say, who's working in an Amazon warehouse? We'll just use that for an example. And what kind of data is then gathered as a whole when you're using these?
Yeah, absolutely. And that warehousing environment is a perfect example, particularly right now when you're dealing with a lot of stress. So right now, some of our clients are 200% growth right now just in terms of the throughput at these warehouses. So these injuries happen fast, and we need to be faster. So we have a device that you wear on your chest. You just saw it in that clip there, where we're collecting about 25 different inputs at a rate of 13 times a second. So all that data that we're pulling in starts with inertial factors that would relate to a degradation of the spine, essentially the most accurate ways of predicting a musculoskeletal injury. And we provide feedback when we see that risk exposure expanding, and we help avoid that injury. Currently, we reduce injuries by about 45% year over year at our top performing clients. But then we go long term and we scale and we find better improvements over time because we collect all the other exposures you'll see in industrial athletes' environment. That means heat, humidity, air quality. We can recommend the right type of PPE. Our goal essentially is that the entire infrastructure with e-commerce and the way that Industry 4.0 has traveled has put a sensor on every single thing in the warehouse. It's optimized the workflow, but it's left the human out of the picture. So our goal is to find metrics based on what that person can do without getting hurt. How do you make a better work shift for them to stay healthy? And we drive all that insight with our data because we're able to not only provide immediate insights to the user to avoid an issue, but we're also able to infer better operational insights to inform an overall better ecosystem and paint a picture to everyone in the value chain why it's worthwhile investing in that industrial athlete. And today, that narrative is ringing quite strong with all of our clients today.
Just a couple of things that you just highlighted there. That was what I was going to ask about, that real-time feedback. Is that something, so if somebody's, say, and just to really kind of get a real good visual and understanding of this, somebody's in the warehouse, they've got this on, they start lifting in the wrong way, would they get a notification that they should maybe change what they're doing? Or how does that actually work for the person in the warehouse using it?
Exactly. It's a seamless process. It starts with a smart dock, and that's key right now because the industry is going towards micro-learning. So in the start of their day, we'll give them a shift with the score. We'll say, hey, Jim, your score yesterday was a 70. It could be a 75 if you focus on this today. Or today, we know it's 90 degrees out, but in the front of that trailer you're working on, it's going to be 140 degrees. So every 15 minutes, we'll provide you a little haptic feedback, a little tap on the chest, essentially, to say, get out and go take a drink of water. So we're just monitoring all the individualized exposures. Because we collect so much data, it becomes pertinent for us to be able to deliver insights based on that person's job type. So it's not just a sensor for industrial athletes, it's a sensor for the individual working decal on the front of that truck, or the guy driving that forklift, or it's that guy at the construction site. It's not a construction worker. We know he's working concrete, or we know he's working electrical today. And it's important for us to tie that narrative so we know exactly how to be poignant with that haptic feedback and an insight. And we change that based on that person's physiology, what we're seeing through the data, and what we see throughout the tenure of their career.
That's really fascinating, just to understand that you could get that much data and that much processing and understand that many different factors and data points being inputted. How do you process all that data? Is it cloud-based? How does that actually work?
It's a great question. In the environments themselves, the challenges with connectivity are massive. Million square foot warehouses built 30 years ago are really not well equipped with Wi-Fi. So the sensors themselves are programmed with their own firmware, so that no matter what the connectivity, we can still provide the pertinent alert for that person. We know that person's profile. We know what they're looking at, so we can still provide that feedback. The sensor itself compresses some of the algorithm, but the smart dock serves as a bridge because, again, the infrastructures we're in, either remote work or we're on a stand-up construction site or just in an old school warehouse, we need to be able to batch that and throttle that based on the bandwidth capabilities on site. So we have a little bit on-prem with the dock, and then the rest of it's all cloud-based.
Well, it's definitely fascinating what you're doing, and certainly very important work for a lot of people to just live healthier lives. And as people are under very stressful situations right now, that is really important to make sure that maintaining that. I want to let everybody know too at home, where they can go to find out more information, or maybe somebody is working in a field where this would be very applicable. Where can they go?
StrongArmTech.com. Best place to get the best insight on us, and the link's right there, and I appreciate that. And just to hammer down on your opinion, more so than evangelizing our brand, it's really we want folks to think about what's going on behind the scenes. What are these individuals doing in these warehouses? We're seeing folks doubling their hiring capacity in times like this, trying to find ways to entertain social distancing just so that we can basically pump the supply chain, which is keeping our country afoot right now. So it's, I'm really glad we had this opportunity to talk about our business, but let's appreciate the materials handlers, the industrial athletes of the world that are keeping us going.
100%. Yeah, definitely an important factor of everything that's happening right now, and I appreciate you making that point as well. Well, Sean, thank you very much for joining us here on Digital Trends Live.
Absolutely. Thanks for the time. Stay safe.
You too. All right, very fascinating, right? Talking about how that kind of technology can actually help a lot of people out. I know we need to get to a break. We've got so much more to talk about. We've got Ciara Presser, who's going to join us here in just a little bit for another edition of Work Life. But we have Ken Young, who is standing by for Tech Briefs. So stick around. We'll be right back with more Digital Trends Live. Welcome back to Digital Trends Live. I'm Greg Nibbler, and thank you so much for joining us. It's Friday, which means it's time for another edition of Tech Briefs, where I am joined by the technology editor of Flipboard, Mr. Ken Young. Ken standing by on his location. I'm here at my location, but we're still going to bring you up to date on some of the news that's happened over this last week as best as possible in 10 minutes. And I think to start off, Ken, let's talk about some of this social media aspects and some of the different ways that people are actually trying to combat misinformation that is out there. There's so much of it.
Absolutely. So, look, coronavirus isn't going to keep us apart, Greg. We're going to keep doing this show for many, many weeks to come. But here's the thing with coronavirus: social media platforms are always facing this whole notion of misinformation, whether it's talking about democracy and elections or even coronavirus. And in this time when people are self-quarantined, they're at home, they're like at a loss for information. They're going to look at the internet. And they're going to look at platforms such as Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and YouTube to find the very latest. And as we all know, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be spouting opinions, whether they're right or wrong, but they're not necessarily the experts. And there are some that are going to be doing it for malicious purposes themselves. So this is actually going to be what Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and many other companies are doing, are setting up portals or hubs on their platforms that are prominent in places when you're talking about content around coronavirus. And they're going to help direct you to the Centers for Disease Control or the World Health Organization's website to get you the very latest about what's going on. Now, Facebook says they're at war. This is all hands on deck, according to Facebook COO Sheryl Sandberg. So that's actually they're going to be very proactive in that. They've actually been very forthcoming with the media. Twitter themselves earlier this week has also said, look, we're going to ban a lot of this type of stuff to these armchair doctors. Of course, when you look at Elon Musk, for example, tweeted out earlier saying that kids are immune to coronavirus. I mean, that's not necessarily true. I mean, the facts are still in dispute. But Twitter said, look, we're not going to remove that tweet. So it's like you say it, but how are you actually enforcing it?
And exactly, I think that's a perfect example of that too. Is that's something that if you're going to stop armchair doctors, which I like that term, and I think we've all have probably encountered an armchair doctor in our lives. That's one that definitely should be removed, even though it's Elon Musk. I mean, he is not a doctor. He does not have valid information on that. We don't know if that's true. So yeah, you'll have to see how this is all enforced. And that's always one of those things that feel like there's a lot of grand statements about it and great statements, in association with trying to control misinformation, but how it's actually handled and implemented, that's always the question. But that's one side of things. So there's definitely a lot out there and a lot of companies banding together saying they are going to battle it. So maybe they'll get better and better with it as they go through. Continuing on here, though, just talking about how this is affecting all kinds of different things in association with tech. A lot of us are ordering things online right now. I mean, primarily that is going to be how we're going to be getting a lot of things, and you need things like Amazon warehouses. For that, there's a couple of things in association with Amazon. One is that they're prioritizing important items. So some of the peripheral items are not going to be stocking, so it's going to be kind of more emergency supplies and things that people actually need. But also there's a report that there was an Amazon warehouse worker who was diagnosed as infected with this coronavirus, and that could be a little bit concerning.
Sure. Yeah. As you said, everyone's ordering off of Amazon. They're with states such as California and now New York essentially in lockdown. People are going to be worried about what's going to happen. I think that the thing to remember amongst all of this, whether there's an Amazon worker that's test positive, and that's unfortunate. What the government has said and what experts have said is that there is not going to be a supply chain disruption. So this whole hoarding and this move to rush out and buy everything is not necessarily a good thing. But I mean, as we look at, as we're talking about earlier, yeah, everyone's ordering on Amazon for their needs. They don't want to go out, and they're worried about hey, what happens now that if an Amazon warehouse shuts down, what's going to happen? Amazon is actually pushed to the brink, but they are actively hiring for people to help with that. Same thing with, I believe, other retail stores as well, such as I believe Target and Safeway and those type of places. There are businesses that are still hiring to kind of keep up with this man. So I wouldn't worry. I mean, obviously, this is a bad thing for anybody to be impacted by COVID-19. Unfortunately, that's an unfortunate thing for this worker. But Amazon's going to hopefully clean up their warehouse and still, they don't sense any real disruption in terms of a delivery of services. But you're right. There are look, we have a hard time keeping up with actual supplies that people need. So we're actually going to suspend delivery to their warehouse, not suspend delivery to consumers, suspend delivery to warehouses of other immaterial things that like in favor of cleaning supplies, groceries, those type of things that you actually will need at home.
Yeah, Amazon actually, I was taking a look here at the statement. I think they're looking to hire 100,000 people. So and they're also giving some pay raises as well. So they are going to be actively trying to make sure that we can keep that supply chain going. And what you said about their statements. So that's definitely a positive right there. Continuing on, let's talk about some other things that are being affected. Naturally, entertainment, and the way that's adapting is changing minute by minute. There was even some breaking news earlier today about this. But we see all the movie theaters, and those chains are shutting down, which is a primary driver for Hollywood when it comes to making their money. I think it was 42 or 48 billion dollars was actually in revenue was driven through those last year. So that's still a primary place, but they've got to figure out a different way to do this. It's either delaying movies, which we've seen like Fast and Furious, which is out I think about a year now, or just about a year. But you also have some other companies like Universal Pictures, which is going to be releasing some movies on demand and available for that way. So how they're all going to react is changing by the minute, but it's really a big change in how we get our entertainment since everybody's going online right now. It's pretty interesting.
Right, and streaming services, like with the launch, we were joking like many weeks ago, like, oh yeah, here's another streaming service from blah blah, NBC from
Ken
blah,
Plus.
Blah, Ken Plus, yes, got to go a week. You can't go a week without mentioning Ken Plus, But the thing is, now it's like, okay, it's kind of jokingly, joking aside, this is actually a pretty interesting move. Like, can production studios, can broadcast networks actually leverage their streaming services to get people out there? And I think it's a cost benefit analysis in terms of whether you want to abandon movie theaters, especially in this pandemic, to kind of get your movies out. Like what's that marketing cost? What's the return on your investment? So you're right. I think a bigger name, blockbuster movies probably can hold off for a year, like Fast and Furious. But there's maybe some other movies where like maybe that's not something they want to really hold out for a year. Maybe they just want to get it out there because they have low expectations. So they might move it out to streaming. I think it's analogous to the back in the day when there was Blockbuster and everyone's doing VHS or DVDs, so like straight to DVD. It's like they bypass the movie theaters. So you kind of start to see some of that. Now we're talking about, I believe, Universal, AMC, all of them are making some of their movies available on demand. Sling is now opening up their service for expanding their trial, so you can be able to watch TV, streaming TV that way. Now, there's also a lot of movies that are coming out earlier, a lot of games as well. Yeah, Animal Crossing and Doom Eternal came out a day earlier. I'm wondering, and Disney Plus is saying the Star Wars Rise of the Jedi and Frozen 2 came out, and there was one other movie. Onward is coming out early as well on Disney Plus. So there's a lot of movies that are coming out earlier and earlier, versus when they were actually supposed to be available. So this is actually going to be helping those that are working from home.
Just to alleviate some of the nerd cred, Rise of Skywalker. But there's also Disney, releasing that Pixar movie early. And I think one thing that you brought up there, too, is just extending these trials, which is great for everybody at home, too. If you're listening to this, obviously hit subscribe to the podcast. But these trial services that are going longer and longer, which kind of alleviate a lot of things. One, it'll get people in the door for some of these different streaming services, but also people need some entertainment. And that's a great way to get some entertainment right now. It's just fascinating how it's all changing. The whole landscape is mixing up as we go through. And I do want to see the Ken Plus service here at some point. This may be the time soon. Ken will have to let us know when that happens. But Ken, like you said at the beginning of this, we will be doing this show every single week. So we will be bringing you news and keeping you up to date. And thanks to everybody who does watch the show or subscribe to the podcast. We appreciate it. And Ken, as always, thank you so much.
Thanks, Greg. Stay safe.
You too. All right, that is Ken Young, the technology editor for Flipboard. Follow everything that he's doing on Flipboard, and they've got some great coverage of everything that's happening as well, including a live streaming service for themselves. So check all of that out for them. And thank you to everybody who's joining us here on Digital Trends. Again, we are live at the Pregame HQ here in Portland, Oregon today. And coming up next, we've got Ciara Pressler, who's going to join us for another edition of Work Life. So stick around, back here in a minute with more Digital Trends Live. Welcome back to Digital Trends Live. I'm Greg Nibbler, and thank you very much for joining us wherever you are. We appreciate it. Hit that subscribe button, and we are live every single weekday, normally out of our Portland, Oregon studio, but of course, things are strange right now, so we're out on location, and we're so glad to be here. We are at Pregame HQ. To my left, it's Ciara Pressler. It's time for Work Life. Ciara, I am sorry, we're gonna have to measure this out a little bit more, I think.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about this, but I'll try to cough and sneeze this way. Yeah.
We're working on the social distancing aspect.
Yes. But welcome. This
Thank
is
you.
my place. I usually come to your place, but this is where the magic usually happens here at Pregame HQ. This is where we meet with business owners, managers, founders, creative professionals to help them develop a game plan.
And it is a beautiful place, so we really do appreciate being here. And I know with Work Life, as always, you give us advice on how to handle things. This is a strange time that we are in right now. What kind of advice should we be talking about, though?
You know, there's not a whole lot of advice to give because everyone has to go through this in the way that they need to. But I've been meeting with our clients, our members all week long, and we've been having really amazing and quite deep discussions about what it means to be a business leader in a time like this. And really anyone can be a business leader. So I wanted to bring you all the advice I've been getting from my own clients who run businesses and run their own projects.
I think that's great, yeah, because this is such a traumatic time. There's so many things going on, so many factors, but being a business leader is more important than ever, I would feel like.
A leader in your community, a leader in your social communities as well as business. You know, the first thing is all of us are waiting for information all the time, and the media has been doing a great job, some better than others. But wow, what a difference between our public officials that are showing their faces, being out there reassuring the public, and those who are not. So the first piece of advice is to show up.
Right, and so what are some different ways that you can do that, to show up and to be present for this?
Sure. So, you know, it might be giving a call to all of your old clients, people you haven't talked to in a long time, and just say, hey, we're thinking of you. This is not a sales call. Show some gratitude. Just show concern. Be a human being.
Yeah.
Like, you definitely want to check and make sure you don't have any, like, previously scheduled messaging that's off point.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, definitely want to check those ad campaigns and those scheduled tweets. But you definitely need to show your face, like whether it's on social media, through email, or your voice through a call.
So, and I feel like that's a good time, for everybody to connect too. Like you mentioned social media. That seems like that would be a really good tool to be out there, but, you know, maintain the important health issues, but also give somebody maybe some positivity or something like that.
Yeah, but stay in your lane, right?
Yeah.
So be active, be careful, protect yourself. If you're binging on social media and it's making you anxious, it's time to put it away for a little while. But also, you know, be careful with what you're retweeting and what you're saying, because now is a time, I hope, that we're going to return to true expertise. You know, on social media, we all feel like we're experts on everything, but we really need to let the health authorities talk about health. You know, it's not time for you to surmise what's really going on. Stay in your lane of what you're actually an expert about.
Yeah, no armchair doctors. That's not a good thing. Well, talking about that, you know, if somebody is an expert in their field, what are some good tips, I guess, for when they're trying to communicate to their audience? What should they keep in mind, and how should they go about that?
So communication is key. It's a great time to put out some content that is relevant for your take on the situation that's going on. But definitely communicating with transparency.
Okay.
First of all, you know, it's not time to hide what's really going on. There's a lot of compassion. I mean, compassion has never been at this level since, you know, 2001. And so if you're going through a hard time or you have to adjust things, it's time to just be clear about what's going on and ask for forgiveness if you're trying something new for the first time.
Right. So transparency, definitely, very important right now. Anything else that people should keep in mind when they're crafting their messages?
Empathy. So one of my clients discovered that, you know, they put out this message, we're going to remote learning, like everything's going to be really great. Shout out to Alchemy Code Lab for doing that last week. But they had to remember that some people were really excited to learn in person and like give them space to be disappointed for a little while. So showing empathy to your clients about what they might be going through and give them space to have their feelings. It's not about like, just let's be so positive all the time. Like,
That's
it's okay
fair.
to grieve right now.
Yeah.
You know, we're very uncomfortable with grief in general in our culture, and right now we're losing jobs, some of us losing projects, clients, opportunities, travel, events, that concert you were looking forward to. And so it's okay to be sad and just chill out and calm down for a little while.
So accept that and deal with that. And yeah, I think that is a very good point. Not to be too in somebody's face of, no, it's fine right now.
Yeah.
Okay, good advice, great advice.
Yeah.
Anything else that you think people should know about too right now?
Yeah, I think it's a great time to do that whole surprise and delight thing that we talk about in customer service. Like, where can you afford to give more than usual? I've been so inspired by my community, my startup community here. The startup leaders in the Portland area built Oregon, Oregon Entrepreneurs Network, PI, which is the Portland Incubator Experiment. The leaders of those organizations have been amazing about communicating, about conducting surveys, about publishing resources that are available to help businesses in this time. So figure out what can you do that's maybe free or generous. Every night after work, I've been hand delivering, with clean hands of course, bottles of wine to all my clients on their doorsteps. So
that is
I
awesome.
thought, I don't know if I can afford it right now, but it is so worth it.
That is so great. Well, Sarah, I mean, thank you all, as always, for all of your advice. But I want to let people know, too, for Pregame HQ, that's where we're at right now. What kinds of opportunities are there for people to engage with what you're doing?
Well, it's a game change now, and it actually is a win-win because we moved everything online last weekend, and now Pregame is 100% virtual. So we've been doing our group sessions via Zoom. They've worked out better than I ever expected, and we've been doing one-on-one business coaching via Zoom as well. So if you need to talk something out, if you need a support group of other people who are in a similar business boat, you know, we usually work with founders, small business leaders, managers. Now is a great time to try Pregame out because you can get us from anywhere. So it's no longer just limited to Portland.
And that is awesome. Take advantage of that, seriously. Ciara, thank you so much. Always appreciate you being on here and always appreciate Work Life. You can check out all the other segments too at digitaltrends.com. And thank you to all of you who are joining us here for this. You know, we're doing our best to make sure that we're broadcasting every single weekday, 9 a.m. Pacific, and we will be. I will say this, next week we might be at a different location. It could be my house. We might be broadcasting from my house, but we will be broadcasting. So I want you to hit that subscribe button wherever you're watching right now, whatever platform you're on, and follow Digital Trends as always all day long for the news. We'll try to keep you up to date as things change so rapidly. We are doing our best to make sure that you have accurate information about what's going on. Also coming up on Monday, we'll have Awesome Tech You Can't Buy Yet. That'll be fun because we've got Drew Prindle who's joining us. We'll have interviews. We've got everything that you'll need to know when it's going on when it comes to technology. So thanks for joining us. I'm Greg Nibbler. I'll see you right back here next week.